What's going on, guys? My name is Restless Corpse, and I'll be your operator today. We're playing Duskers, but today I brought in another operator. Alright, so why don't you start off just telling us who you are?
I am Tim Keenan. I make the video games. At the moment, we are right about to launch Duskers, which actually, by the time this airs, maybe it will have launched. Um, and Duskers is a let's see, how do I describe this game? You pilot drones into derelict spaceships to try to figure out why everybody's dead, and you do this using a command line interface and sorry, there's a motorcycle going by.
Yeah, I totally heard that.
This is what's great about being an independent game developer. You can do it from your home, and
Yeah,
at least the dog isn't packing, right?
right.
But yeah, you use a command line interface, which is pretty weird. It's a roguelike. It's a real-time game, but it kind of feels turn-based, I guess, because it's kind of a slow, methodical tension-building game. But it's definitely real-time, so that you start to feel that pressure when you're jumping around between your drones. So it's also a roguelike. It's also kind of like a squad-based RTS. It's a lot of weird conglomeration of elements, actually.
It really is. Like when I'm telling my friends about it, it's really hard to describe it
Yeah.
without just showing them. So I'll be like, "Yeah, just watch the video, man. It's awesome."
Yeah, I find that that's a problem that I have sometimes with I get people on the forums, and this is kind of like a great compliment and like a huge insult. Like they'll be like, this is the game I always wanted. And then they'll be like, I came to the store page and I didn't really understand what it was, so I left, and then I saw it on a Let's Play and I was like, "Oh my God, this game looks great." And then they buy it. And I'm like, "Well, that's great that you love the game, but it's like pretty horrible that like you came to my store, like
Right,
saw the
right.
items I was selling, like left. I failed that hard, and it was like the game you always wanted to play." So it's like it's tough because I think also the screenshots, um, in motion, the game looks a lot different than it does in
It really
screenshots.
does. It really
And
does.
the screenshots, I think they're cool, but like they just confuse people. They're like, "What am I even looking at?" So
Right,
we're
because
actually going to add text.
you've got the schematic view and the drone view, and they look so wildly different.
Right.
So you're like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, we're gonna. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually. I don't like doing it, but we're gonna add text to the screenshots on the store page and stuff like that. That kind of like says like you're controlling a drone,
Oh,
like
right, like
stuff.
advertisements, kind of.
Yeah, kind of like that, just so that when people look at it and they're like, "What am I looking at?" We can kind of answer that and be like, "This is what you're looking at." Just so you know, we made a weird game.
Right.
It's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Like making a strange game. It's cool because everyone's like, "Wow, this is like something I've never played before." But then it's like now it's hard to describe to friends and to pitch to, press or whatever.
Right, right. I remember when you initially sent the email, or I think Eric sent the email.
Yeah.
He described it as kind of, one of the things that he described it as was kind of like aliens. And you and I talked about this as well. That's really the vibe that I get from it.
Yeah.
When the aliens are all coming through the tunnel and they've got the turrets set up. It just, I don't know. That's one of the things that I pictured. And I remember saying to you that when I think about the game, I picture Hicks with his headset on. And what's funny about that is the image in my mind is actually the picture on the front of the first Metal Gear, where you can tell that is totally Michael Biehn, but the way he looks just looks like, you know, he looks like he would be commanding something
Right.
futuristic like that. It's
Yeah, and
really
that's the
cool.
thing is that so it's funny at first in the very early version of the alpha, with the load screen that we had, did it had a picture of a chair in front of a bunch of monitors, and you were looking at the back of the chair. Um,
I actually saw that on Scott Manley's video.
oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, so that was kind of like we were at the very beginning of the game. This is kind of taking me back. Like we were struggling with when people first started playing the game. They were kind of confused as to what role they were playing, what was going on. They were just like, I'm like in space. I'm like, am I the drone? Am I controlling the drone? Like, what's going on? Um, and so we started thinking about things. Like a lot of suggestions we got were cool suggestions. One of them I remember specifically was, "Hey, have that bed of monitors, and then have like the camera careen in like you're sitting down in front of them, and then zoom in, right?"
Right.
Um, And the thing that I never liked about that is that I always had like I always make these like I usually say I put a stake in the ground. It's probably a really bad analogy. It's probably better to say like you have like a design pillar or something like that.
Right.
But you have these things that you kind of revolve all your design and decisions around, right? And you can move them, but I think you need that. And one of mine was like the sense of realism and this sense that you were the operator. So I wanted your monitor to be your monitor, and I
Right.
wanted your keyboard to be your keyboard. And I didn't want to ever, like in games sometimes, like when you wake up and you know the camera's moving and stuff like that. It's cool, like from a cinematography standpoint, but it takes me out of the game. It's the same way as like I say this sometimes, like you know when mud splatters on the screen. I'm
Right.
like, oh, hey, I was Geralt like a minute ago, but now I'm the guy behind the camera that's 10 feet behind Geralt,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, I didn't want that. I really didn't. And I was like, how in the world am I going to be a stubborn brat and like get my way, but yet convey to these people who they are? And it was tough. And I don't know. I mean, I think having the boot screen at the beginning helps because it's like, wait a minute, like I'm in front of a computer and this is my computer. I think having the logs that say like, you know, fuel low, like out of, you send distress signals so you know you're in trouble.
Right.
Uh,
That kind of creates a sense of urgency, which I think is really cool.
yeah, so we did all these kind of things, these smaller things to try to avoid showing you like your hands or you know anything like that so that you really did feel like that. And the best compliment I think I get is when people say that they turn off the lights, they put on their headphones so they kind of can't see anything around the monitor and then they like envision themselves in this spaceship
That's
and
exactly how I
they're
play it.
typing. Yeah. I actually had people some like minor complaints because they're like, "That's what I do," but like I don't have a backlit keyboard and like I'm not the greatest typer, and it's it's funny, but it's pretty cool. So I think that it's really cool whenever, and I've said this before, but I think it's really cool whenever you're trying to do something and you do it.
Yeah.
Um, like it's kind of rare. Maybe I'm not good, but I feel it's rare for like you to be like, I want you to feel isolated and alone. I want you to feel like you are on this ship. I want you to feel like technology is like your friend and worst enemy. I want you to feel like you're on this rickety bucket of bolts, you know? And when people tell me they feel that, it's almost mind blowing. I'm like, really? Because that's like what I was trying to go for. Like, how did you get that? You know?
And you know, speaking of that, did you plan for Duskers to be as creepy as it is?
Not originally, no.
Because
I,
it is. And when you were describing it, you didn't mention survival horror at all. But that's what it feels like.
you know, it's funny when I made the first version of the game, it was like boxes, like with a headlamp, right?
Right.
And you were just going through and you saw the schematic. It was the same thing we would switch to the schematic, but it was all just like crap, you know, placeholder everything. And I remember Randy O'Connor, who worked with Ian Stalker on a Scapegoat and Scapegoat 2, and he's with Tiger Style and those guys. He was playing it, and he was like, he took the headphones off and he looked at me and he was like, I feel so tense right now. And he was like, and this is like basically like a gray box prototype. He was like, this is going to be an incredibly tense game.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh. I was like, I wanted that sense of tension because like that, like I wanted that sense of in the first Alien when he's going down with the flamethrower and they're closing off the vents behind him.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that sense of like, I don't know where this thing is. All I can do is like, have a motion sensor or whatever and hope it doesn't glitch out. And I wanted that sense of tension, but
And
I kind of felt like, again, like, I won't be able to achieve all of that, but at least if they get the gist of it. And like,
I
I
don't know,
think,
you killed it, man, because when the motion sensor fails and you need to get through that room, it's scary as hell, dude.
yeah, it's tense. I find myself, I've played the game a lot. And every time, I mean, even when I'm just playing it, but especially when we've added like visual glitches and we've added like some sound,
Right.
especially distorted sounds. So now I'm trying to avoid jump scares, right? Like I didn't I felt like that was cheap. We kind
I
of have one.
actually feel the same way with that. That's
Yeah, we kind of have unintentionally. We sort of have one jump scare in the game. Um,
I would say that there's two, to be honest. The hostile drone that shoots at you really quick, like it
oh
just
yeah,
zooms to you, that
right.
scares the hell out of you the first time it happens.
Oh
And
yeah,
the second one was when I forgot to turn off the defense turret, and I went into that room, just barreled in there to go pick up all the scrap from all the destroyed threats,
yeah,
and it immediately blew me up. It
right.
made me jump out of my chair. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's freaky, right? Like, and yeah, and that the enemy that leaps at you, like what I was trying to do was I was trying to make a variety of enemies. Like I didn't want to have again, like I wanted the game to feel real. And not, photo real, but like, as much as I can, like I wanted it to feel genuine and not gamey.
Right.
So I think immediately like players were like, okay, so like, you're gonna have like, 20 or 60 enemies in the game, right? And I'm just picturing these RPGs with like, you've got like,
The blue
the
imp
blue.
and then the green imp.
Yes.
It's the same
And
model,
it's
just
like
different color.
it
Yeah.
just takes twice as many hit points to kill, but then you get a sword that does twice as much damage
Yeah.
and you're just kind of treadmilling. And I was like, no, I want everything in the game to feel sort of more genuine than that. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to create enemies, and I was like, if I had an idea for an enemy, or I was going to put an enemy in the game, and it wasn't significantly different than any existing enemy, then I wasn't putting it in. So there are only actually four in the game,
Right.
um, and the reason for that one was because we have incredibly slow moving and incredibly fast moving, and somewhat in between. And that one, because of the nature of it, yeah, it like leaps at you. Then it doesn't give you as much. It patrols in a different way that makes it easier, but that makes it harder because you don't have any warning time. It also prevents people from doing the thing which they did a lot in the beginning of the game, and they probably still do, where they like they
Inch through a
drive into
door.
a door
Yeah.
and then they back up and close the door.
I've done
Um,
that.
yeah,
That's actually part of my strategy right now.
yeah,
And when I first saw the swarm, it screwed me over because they're just as fast as you.
yeah. So it's one of those things where I'm trying to tell the player, and to a degree it works, to a degree it doesn't. Like if you open that door, like the thing in there is stronger and faster and better than you.
Right.
Like you need to be smarter beforehand. Like you're not going to out tactic these things. You're going to out like strategize these things.
Right.
Or I guess it would be tactics. I guess you are going to out tactic them, but you're not going to outperform
Well,
them.
but the moment that they see you and you have nothing between you and them, tactics are kind of out the window.
They are. You're kind of, and I wanted that feeling because I don't I didn't want the I didn't want the slow death, where oh I messed up and I didn't have a plan and I didn't have a good strategy, but because I can maneuver my fingers fast enough and whatever I can kind of cheat death.
Right.
I kind of wanted it to be punishing in the fact that it's almost to me like in a way like Super Meat Boy, where it's like it's less punishing to be punishing. It's like if you just kill me and you do it quick, then I learn, right? And I
Yeah.
kind of like that because it makes the game very dramatic. Like a lot of times when things go wrong, they go really wrong.
Yeah. I've noticed
Yeah,
when one of your drones gets killed in a doorway and you can't close it, and the thing
yeah,
just goes down the line because you've left
yeah.
all those doors open.
And it's crazy because at first you lose one, and then you're like, oh damn, and you're not really thinking about the others, and then all of a sudden you hear another beep beep, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh wait a minute, and then you're like scrambling, and it's too late, like they're gone, man.
Yep.
Though sometimes, and there are, and we did make it in the game that you can, intentionally we make it so that you can rescue the drone. Like if one of them goes down in an isolated area, but it's always hard
Yeah.
because it's like the thing that killed it is still there, and you've got to deal with it with one less resource, right?
Right.
But because it has such important resources, it really, again, that's another thing I wanted. I really wanted that sense of survival. So I needed these drones to be super important because if it was like in the first iteration of the game, it was literally a paper prototype, and I was watching it the other day, and it's blowing my mind. But I was talking with Holly, my wife, and we were kind of like initially designing it, and she was like, "How many drones do I get?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe like 16, you know." And like back then, like they were kind of turrets and stuff like that, so it was a different game. But because you have so few drones, and because every drone, the stuff that you have, and this is why I make things break, and this is why it's like it's got to be that like that thing is important because I want to force you into a decision. Like,
Right.
do I go and rescue that?
And
Or
the scrap maximum is a really nice touch too, because you can't just hoard a bunch of scrap. Because
right.
if you have like hundreds of scrap and one of your drones dies, you're just like, whatever. I'll just
Yeah,
you
you
know
don't care.
I'll build
That
another
was
one.
yeah, that actually came really late in development, like when because the game is tough. So early in development, like nobody was really good at the game,
Right.
and so all we got was just like this game is really hard. And then eventually people got really good at the game, and so that's when all of a sudden I was like, the game breaks when you are able to hoard scrap, like you're saying, because then all of a sudden like all the risk and all the tension goes away.
Right.
It's really funny. I find that players, when they first play the game, is incredibly challenging and brutal. And they kind of complain about it, and then as soon as they like might get a little bit better, and before we had certain things in there, they would start to complain that they missed it when it was just brutal.
Right.
Because it does. It adds. I do find that sometimes when I'm playing a game, and all of a sudden I don't like it anymore. Like I'm even unaware of it. I'm just like, this game isn't that fun. Like, why did I think this game was fun? And then I'll up the difficulty, and I'll be like, oh, that's why this game was fun. Like, because right now I don't have tension and I don't have challenge, right?
Right. And I wanted to bring that up too, the procedurally generated stuff. I mean, it's aside from what looks like the first system, which always seems to kind of be the same. After that, I mean, it's anyone's guess.
Yeah.
And bringing that up, is there a way that players can be blindsided by like late game stuff early on, as early as the second system?
Yep.
Okay, so that's something you have to watch out for.
Yep. So what we did, so again, this goes back to this like pillar that I have about like realism.
Hmm.
So I didn't like, especially because the game had exploration. Like if you're playing FTL, they give you simple choices, right? But you're going left to right, and it's gonna get the further you go, the harder it gets.
Right.
And that's good because it gives you a sense of progression, like when you do a run and you get further than you got the last time. However, in Duskers, you can go in any direction.
Yeah.
And a part of the game is exploration. And I mean, I think that I try to nest things if you like if I find a core to a game, I try to almost like nesting dolls.
Right.
Like you can tow out scrap. So why can't you tow out a drone? So then why can't you tow out a whole ship,
Right.
right? Like it's like you can commandeer a vessel. You can replace your drones. You can replace an upgrade, right? And so it's the same way with the exploration. You're exploring the ship, so you need to be exploring the system and the galaxy and the universe.
Mm.
So I wanted you to be able to go any way. And when you can go any way, you have two. I kind of had two choices. Either I could make it that okay, we're kind of making it gamey, and like every system you go, we're just going to make it a little bit hotter. And I didn't like that because I feel that what you're sacrificing whenever you start to play with the random number generator, whenever you start to massage that, you might be making a better experience for your player, like a more gentle experience, but you're also reducing the amount of variance that they will experience.
Right, which is really important, especially in a game like this, because if it got progressively harder as you went along, then you could spend the entire early game just flying through things because you know it's not going to be that hard. So
Yeah,
the way
I
you
didn't
have it
want
now
that.
is you're always worried about something.
Right. I didn't want that, and I also didn't want them to be like, oh, you know what? I'm not. I feel like I haven't gotten enough scrap on this run. I should reset because, let me start over because I know that I'm not setting myself up for the end game,
Right.
I didn't want that either. I always wanted, because I think one of the things that's the most fun, at least when I play Duskers, is when I've lost something or when I'm in a bad situation, right? And I'm tempted to reset. Like I lost a drone and it had like a really key upgrade on it. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm like, what in the world am I gonna do with like a probe and like a stun,
Right.
upgrade?
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I gonna do, And
Although
then
I
all of a
really
sudden,
like the probe. I'm just
yeah,
throwing that out there. The
the,
probe is good.
right. Maybe that was a bad example. What am I gonna do with the
Sonic.
with the pry and Sonic,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pry the door open, I'm gonna turn on Sonic, or I'm gonna wait and then I'm gonna back up and then I'm gonna turn on Sonic if something comes in, you know. I had like Brendan the other day was right next to me, and I always feel that like stun is kind of one of the weaker upgrades. Um, and that's all he had at the moment, and he was using it to detect where enemies were. He'd put it in, and because it auto detonates, he would open up doors, and then if it detonated, he'd be like, okay, that was like there's an enemy in there.
Right.
And he could also run past it,
It's
right?
kind of how I use probe. I don't even put like stealth or anything on it, and I'll
Right.
let it go. And if it dies, then I know there's an enemy there.
Exactly. So it's like I think the best moments are when you are in a lot of trouble. Like there have been so many times when I've been like, I can't get out of this. And then I've like you have it's just like this MacGyver moment where you're like, wait, think. And
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, wait a minute, if I and like 50% of the time it doesn't work. You
Right.
know?
Right.
But sometimes it doesn't, even when it doesn't work, just the fact that like I came up with that plan, like I had hope. I think that's the greatest moment in the game. And so all of these things that I do are kind of designed, people might see them as like cruel or whatever, but they're all designed so that I can give you that moment. Like I don't want to hold your hand and be like, "Hey, it's okay, it's gonna be fine." I want you to be under duress and have to make a plan with what little you have, because that's what really I feel like that's what it would feel like, and if you were trying to survive.
And not to mention, it's actually an amazing feeling. Like I think in today's video for me, there was a ship that I was just about to finish up, and then radiation started seeping into the last room that I needed to check. And then a door somewhere else broke, and I was like, I need to get the hell out of here. Like I don't know what's going on with this
Yeah.
ship.
Yeah.
And then when you make it out, then you feel like a kind of like a badass because that was crazy. You got out on the seat of your pants. It was an Indiana Jones style thing.
Right.
I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head with that one.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we were going for. And so like that's the thing is that like I think as a designer, if you have this core principle, this like pillar of this fun that you know that you're trying to, siphon people into, then you can make all your decisions around that. And some people, sometimes those decisions aren't clear to people. And so, they'll be like, oh, this game is hard or whatever. But it's like, when you if they get it, like that's what I'm looking for is the player. Hopefully, like, the player gets it at a certain point and they come on this wild ride. But back to the beginning of this tangent, that's why I think I decided we did eventually put into settings. You can make it so that the opening system, or maybe the opening galaxy or something like that, is always easy.
Yeah, it's in the
Yeah, it's in the
difficulty.
settings,
Yeah.
and the difficulty settings. And we also made it that we could reset the unlocking of the enemies. Because what we do is the first time when you're playing through, we don't unlock like the harder enemies until you've made so many jumps.
Right.
But then once they're unlocked forever. Because I
Right.
didn't want to reset that, because then I played the game a lot, and so it annoyed me to know that like the first ship that I was on, I didn't have to worry about like two enemies,
Right.
and like then I could strategize around that, and I felt like I was gaming the system. So when I go on my first ship and it feels tense, like, and I don't have to wade through either the easy part or just be going through the first couple to just build up steam and like get a lot of scraps so that I could, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that first ship, I'm thinking, I'm like, what's in here? That's what I like. So we've made a lot of settings for people, because a lot of people do say it's difficult, and so you know, we want that to be something. In this game especially, I've decided that like whenever anybody has a problem, not any problem, but a legitimate gripe, I put it in settings. I'm
Right.
just like, okay, that's fine. Like some people at the beginning, we didn't have like a warning system for the radiation,
Hmm.
and people didn't like it, and I'm like, it's a setting. If you really love everything about this game except that, then turn it off. Um,
And
and so,
so speaking of things that I love about this game, how did you guys come up with the name Duskers? Because when I'm telling my friends about the game, the last thing that I always say is, "And dude, it's called Duskers."
yeah,
Like that's one of the
it's
coolest names I've heard for a video game.
thank you. Yeah, it was the story is not as sexy as the name. So I was literally sitting there like thinking, because all right, how long do I want to make the story? I was literally sitting there, and the game was originally I didn't bother naming games in the prototype phase, right? So I just
Right.
call them whatever they are. So I called the game Scavenger because you scavenged, and I literally was recording paper prototypes of this idea, right? And I had this other indie developers are usually super positive and super great and hippy dippy, right?
Right. Right.
This guy or girl, I don't know, like they mailed me that like I was, you know, ripping them off because they had a game that was called Scavenger that was like it was basically XCOM. It was like it was
Right.
a turn-based squad game that was not. I mean, you could say that Duskers, you control multiple units, and you could say that it's kind of real-time-ish, but like, well, I mean, I guess that one was turn-based, but they were not alike at all.
Right.
He was so miffed about, and I was like, "This is a paper prototype, man. Like, I'm gonna change the name, and like and even if it looked like your game now, it probably will end up totally different. It
Yeah.
was just one of those moments. So I was like, I don't even want to deal with this guy. So I was sitting there with Holly, and I was like, we've got to rename this game. Um, and out of the blue, she was like, "What about Duskers?" And I was like, "That is a cool name."
I'm
I'm
telling
like,
you, dude, it's
I'm
awesome.
like, I'm like, that's a cool name. I like that. And we were gonna name it Duskers like 318, and, like to make it all sci-fi. But then like we looked at it and we were like, oh, there was like Dust um 512, or I can't remember the name of the game, but it was like too close. So we were like, all right, maybe we'll just go with Dusker, and then I made it Duskers because I like that better.
Right.
But so I asked her, I'm like, did you just make that up? She's like, no, no, that's like I think that's the name of the dwarfs in Dragon Age that like went above ground and like sold things and like were kind of kicked out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And like, so I looked it up and I was like, wait a minute, hun, like that's not what they're called at all. They're called like something else. I'm like, there's nothing. I'm looking up Duskers right now and there's nothing like for it. And I
Right.
was just looking at her and I'm like, where did you get that name? And she's like, huh, I don't know. I guess I must have made it up then. I was just like, what? Oh,
All
it
right. So
was so
the last thing that I want to ask you is, if you did have a AAA budget, what kind of game would you make? Just real quick.
um that is an interesting question. I think if I had a AAA budget, I'd make the same games and I'd just pay everybody well. I literally like have to pay everybody a horrible, including myself, like horrible, horrible salaries. And we usually don't, we usually have to kind of cut a lot of things out of the game. So it's like I think what the temptation would be is to make this like epic game, and then be in the same bind where
Right.
you're like, oh God, we can't get it done in time, and we got to pay everybody and make them work horrible hours. So I think actually on Duskers, I did a good job of not having too much crunch. Like I think on A Virus Named Tom we had a lot of crunch, and on Duskers we didn't have as much.
Right.
Um, and that was because we were funded. We were fortunate enough that we got indie funded, which made life way better.
Well,
But
it
yeah,
worked out because you guys have a very positive rating on Steam. I mean, everybody seems to love the game.
yeah, it's kind of mind blowing. I'm kind of falling in love with making a niche game because at first I was really worried because the game is so odd. But it turns out that like now instead of having to deal with like every person on the internet that's trying to play a game or whatever, it's like people that aren't into this game, like they'll look right away and they'll be like, wait, command line, like whoa, like like weird sci-fi. If you're not into it, you're not into it, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it that like my forums and everything, it's like full of people who care. And man, yeah, it's so cool. Like right now, it's not gonna last forever. But we're at like, they added that recent review. So
Yeah.
we're like 96% positive for the overall and 100% right now for our recent last 30 days or whatever.
Yep.
And that's like blowing my mind to see like very positive with 100% and 96%. That's like it just makes me happy. And I know that like as soon as like we open up the gates, hopefully a bunch of people buy it, we'll get more, less of the true believers, and so that won't stay forever. But hopefully, I don't know, man. Like the reception so far from the people who get it is they really love it, and it's been really humbling and amazing because when we were making this game, I was like, man, really about 2 weeks before we launched it in early access, I was going to the team like, I don't know if we just made a game for us. Like, because I feel like we would have heard from somebody if they thought this game was cool by now, and like nobody has said anything. And the guys over at Gaslamp Games, that are working on Clockwork Empires, and they did Dungeons and Dreadmore. I had randomly sent like a couple keys to them because I had talked to them when I was up in Vancouver, or
Right.
or one of them, and they sent me a message and they were like in love with the game and they were sending me pictures of them like whiteboarding scenarios and stuff. It was the first time ever I really felt like maybe somebody would get this game. And then the early access, just like so many people came out of the woodwork and fell in love with the game. It was pretty awesome.
Well,
It was
I was hooked on the game just playing the drone operator training. To be honest, like after playing that, I was like, this game is going to be amazing.
it's different. Like everybody, one of my favorite things is when I watch Let's Plays and stuff like that. I feel like I'm always like three, two, one, and then they're like, this game is unlike anything I've played.
Yeah.
Like especially if they've played it before they start the stream and they like talk to their audience and they're trying to explain it. That's like the first thing they say. They're like, this is just unlike. They're like, I love it. It's unlike anything I've played, so it's really hard to describe. So like you said, like they're like, let me just show you.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to say before we wrap this up?
I'd like to thank you for having me on. It's always fun to hear people that have played the game and that kind of get it. And it's also great to be invited on to something like this because I just love talking about my game. But yeah, no, I guess if this, we're like a few days to launch right now, but I
Yeah.
guess when this airs, it might be launched already. But yeah, May 18th, Duskers is out on Steam and GOG and Humble Store and on our website. And it's $20. So if you're into
Well worth
something
it.
weird, go take a look. And if it tickles your fancy, then let us know what you think.
Yeah, and guys, don't forget to go to the subreddit as well.
Mm.
Yeah, Duskers subreddit, our subreddit, or our Duskers.
Yeah, I almost love too much interacting with the community. It's very distracting. I
I've
do feel
noticed, man, you comment on everything.
yeah, I do. I have a problem. So like I feel like the after early access, it was like a solid week where like we were just like on the forums. So I feel like the after launch that week, I'm just gonna be on the forums, like trying to fix any problem that anybody has and trying to answer any questions and stuff. But it's addicting. It's fun when like people are talking about something that you love and poured 3 years of your life into.
Right. Well, awesome, man. Thanks for swinging by and
Yes,
having a
thanks
chat
so
with
much
me.
for having me. I really appreciate it.
Cool, man. Take it easy.